Miss Stefani Zinerman,
Yes.
how wonderful to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
For the people who don't know you, please introduce yourself.
Well, I am New York State Assembly Member Stefani Zinerman, and I proudly represent the communities. We don't like to call them neighborhoods because they're communities of Bedford-Stuyvesant and the Crown Heights, two historically engaged and vibrant communities in the 56th Assembly District. That's why I proudly wear that number on my chest because I want to telegraph to people just how vibrant and historic and filled with arts and culture and small business and entrepreneurship and a deep-seated belief that we are a sovereign people. So many of us have come from different places, whether it's from South or from the Caribbean or from the continent, to settle here and continue the legacy that is Weeksville, that first African-American community that was made up of doctors and lawyers and business people who founded schools, freedom schools, so that the next generation of people in this community could understand their worth and take care of this community for generations to come. And so they've done that, and they have remained a civically engaged community for all of these many decades. And they use the power of their engagement to ensure that they elect elected officials, public servants who are going to really continue the legacy of education, entrepreneurship, arts and culture, housing preservation, which is, as we all know, a very, very big issue. But we also, we do a very good job, I think, of centering what health and wellness looks like. Not always have we had the opportunity to have institutions that have supported that, but by growing our own food and having our own health and wellness spaces and understanding that Western medicine is one kind of medicine, but there's also Eastern medicine and those things that we brought from, those practices that we brought from the continent that keeps us thriving and vibrant in this neighborhood, this community. So thank you for having me.
That's a whole lot. And I love how you put everything into context relating back to the history of where it started, which is Weeksville. But I want to know more about you, like, the politics. Everybody's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. But I want to know, like, about Stefani.
Okay.
You are one of the few, I think, like, Bed-Stuy originals, if I can call it.
Yes.
That's one. How did you grow up? How did you grow into politics?
Okay. Well, I tell people, and it's true, I'm a third generation Bed-Stuy resident. My grandparents migrated here. And the reason why I want to serve and continue to serve this community is because they nurtured my grandparents. This community, they came here from South. They had a couple of cousins, but that was it. But the churches in this community, the civic groups in this community, right? The fact that we had this vibrant music and art scene really nurtured them. And that's why they settled here. They could have come here and had a different experience and then went somewhere else. And they chose to raise the next generation. And so for me, I grew up in that tradition of houses of worship, of a Friday night and a Saturday night, whether or not you were in a neighbor's house party, or it was a block association party, or it was one of the many lounges that we used to have. So, it was tradition to have a lounge, as they would say, on the corner that was a supper club also, and you could listen to local artists, and these were your friends. These are people that you hung out with, right? To everybody else, they were these superstars, but they lived amongst us. Lena Horne lived in this community. Jackie Robinson, who I laid codenames my block after, lived in this community. So there's always been luminaries in Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights. And so when you think about that coupled with, okay, These black people from Harlem came here. That's why they built the A train. So you had this wonderful mix of people.
Really? Wait a minute. That's why they built the A train?
Yes, because the people in Harlem needed someplace else to live, and Brooklyn was the next frontier. And so that A train was the connector between Harlem and Bed-Stuy. That's why they're the two traditional Black communities in New York City.
And that's where the song came from.
And that's where the song came from as well. And so they became when the folks came from Weeksville, they settled here so they could buy land, right? So that they could vote. Because the only way that you can actually vote and become civically engaged is if you own property. Now think about 2024. Think about how there are states who are trying to erode our voting rights. That where we used to have civil rights districts in New York State, they've gutted those, right? And how we have depressed the vote so that people don't even want to go out and vote anymore. Imagine if we still had the law that said you had to own property in order to vote. Right. And so in just this, since 1964 until now, 60 years, look at the turnaround.
Yeah.
And we got to talk about why that is and why property is so important. So I just want to say quickly that the reason why they were civically engaged is because they knew that was the only way that they were going to be a sovereign community. It was the only way that you were going to be able to vote and vote people into office that were going to make sure that they were passing laws that were going to support your way of life and not retard your way of life.
And so are you telling me that the people who started Weeksville, they could vote because they had land even though they were Black?
Yes. So we know kind of the history. They were Black members of Congress. And that's when they were, that was the Republican Party. And as soon as Reconstruction happened, people started getting elected all over the country. And then we had the backlash, right? So Jim Crow started. And then they started with passing all kinds of state laws, right, to take away your rights. And then they were saying, oh no, you cannot vote anymore. So you can't run
oppression, gerrymandering, everything we have now, that's now fall again in full blow. Okay.
Exactly. They've just changed the way.
And they keep changing it all the way.
And this is what I tell people, why it's so important to stay engaged. So voting is important, but it happens every 2 years, every 4 years, although we have elections every year. But you have to stay engaged because you have to understand why it's important for your voice to be heard.
It's like Barack Obama said, democracy is not a spectator sport.
No.
You gotta be engaged.
Actively engaged.
When you vote, you're not done yet. You gotta participate.
That's right. Yes. And participation for me is having a conversation with my elected officials. Being an elected official, starting a conversation with my constituents. We send out mail, we host events, we send out texts, we call people on the phone, we send emails, we'll show up at your door. We do all of those things because we want to know, what are you experiencing, so we can work together to improve our community. And when you see things improve and you don't know about them, it's not because nobody tried to tell you about it, although some things are going on in our community that are under the radar. But for a public servant, and that's what I consider myself, the most important thing for me is to be in the conversation with my neighbors, my friends. We call them constituents, but they're my neighbors, to talk about how we build for a better tomorrow. And we can only do that together.
I love how passionate you are about the things that you say. I remember how we met.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So for the people who don't know, we met canvassing for Obama.
Organizing for America.
Organizing for America. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I remember how passionate you were. And you were working for the organization your own organization back then. That was for the elderly people.
That was before then. When I met you, I had Age Friendly Central Brooklyn hadn't started. It was there, but I didn't get connected until I actually worked on Rob's campaign and went to work with him. That's when that happened, which was a year and a half after we met.
Okay.
Yeah, I was not working for, Rob until 2013. And we worked from 2011 into 2012 to get Obama reelected.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. Incredible. This history is like, okay. So, and then because I knew you were working for Rob, we talked, but all of a sudden you were running for assembly member.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Tell me that story. Please share that story because I was there and I need you to share that story.
It's an interesting story. And I'm going to actually add a little piece in front of that. The reason why I was available to work on the Obama campaign is because Bloomberg closed down the workforce development and adult literacy program that I had been working for 14 years. That was my passion. That was the work that I was doing. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And so I had time to become the neighborhood team leader for Obama for America. And that is when I met Rob. And he said that he was running for office. And I said, I was like, oh, that's great. He said, well, come over. I want you to meet a couple of people. And I did. And that's how I found out the history that he had been the previous neighborhood team leader for Obama for America. And so we just gelled and we talked. He told me he was running for office. And about a week or two later, he called me and he said, listen, I'm looking for a petition manager. I said, well, what is that? So he told me what it was. And I said, well, right now I'm trying to figure out if am I going to start a not-for-profit doing workforce development? Am I going to write a book? I was still trying to figure it out. And I had the luxury to, stay home and just kind of do some volunteer work. And so I told him yes. And so then his campaign manager took another job in Buffalo. And he said, well, do you want to be my campaign manager? And I said, why not? And that was my first election as a campaign manager. And we won by 68 votes. And this is why I always tell people that every vote matters. So
who did he run for? Oh,
who did he run? Oh, well, that was an interesting race because he was in that race. Reverend Conrad Tillard, Reverend Robert Waterman, Minister Kirsten Foy. Now he runs this a not-for-profit called the Ark of Justice, and this young man named Akil Williams. So it was all men in this race. Two of them were pastors. One was on his way to be, and it was a pretty tough race for the first race. So anyway, I had gone on to I worked on Terrain Rights campaign. My best friend from high school decided she wanted to run for judge. I ran her campaign.
Who's that?
And that was Judge Ellen Edwards. You've met Ellen before.
Yeah.
So when I finished her race, I said, I'm never going to do this again unless I'm doing it for myself, because it is a lot of work. But I did enjoy the work. And so Tremaine decided that she wanted to run for Senate. And they asked the members of the club, Al Van was one of the founders of the club, well, who's up next?
The club, please name the
Vanguard the Vanguard Independent Democratic Association, also known as VIDA. Which means love in Spanish. And so the president of the club didn't want to run for the assembly seat. He wanted to run for the city council seat. And so Al asked me if I was interested in running. And I said, I never thought about it before. I really was more interested in helping people with campaigns. And I had, at that point, I wanted to take a break from running for campaign. So I remembered what I said. You said out loud, because God listens to everything, you will never do this for anybody else unless you decided to do it for yourself. And then the opportunity was before me. So I went home and I thought about it, and I announced my candidacy in February of 2020, and COVID hit in March of 2020.
And I remember because I was like, Stefani, you're running? And it was like, you were telling it as if a light bulb went off, like, hey, yeah, like when Elvin said, why don't you run? It's like, and I was like, yeah, why not?
Why not? Why not? And we were doing mostly civic engagement. Remember, we would, go in the back of the bar, invite some people over and said, this is why you should vote. This is why you should participate in the census. This is what you need to understand about the local democratic machine, all of those things. Yeah.
So, yeah, and then you won.
I won my first election. I had an opponent, And we were able to prevail in 2022. I did not have an opponent, so I just had to get myself on the ballot for reelection. And then this year, I decided that I wanted to run for reelection again. And I have an opponent, but mainly I have a group of I guess I would say a insurgent party that is very interested in having this seat.
Okay, so now we're getting there. Like, okay, why do you? Okay, what have you? I know. Please share the things you run on, like your program.
Right.
Like, what did you accomplish in those 2 terms?
Right.
And why do you want to run again?
Right.
Like, what is left? Why do you want to run again? Is it pure ego, or is it like, no, I didn't accomplish this. This is what I want to accomplish.
Yes. So if people know anything about the way our government runs, it is a little difficult to get things done in a first term. When you get 4 years. When you run for the state elections, you only get 2 years. So every 2 years you run for office. So just think about what that means. And so you get elected in November of 2020. And you begin, right? But let's just go with the last one, 22. You get elected in November and you start your term starts in January, right? So you really have a year before you have to start running for office for the next term. So you're in this perpetual state of running while you're trying to, what I would like to say, bring home the resources to your community that you promised. So I promised 2 things. I did not change my campaign slogan from 2020 to 2022. It was, I'm running to create opportunities for my district, wherever that may lie, whatever it is that they need, and to bring home the resources to do that. And so what have I done in that time? I sit on 6 committees, aging, agriculture, labor. I'm the chair of the subcommittee on emerging workforce. I sit on the Peoples with Disabilities Committee and tourism, arts, parks, and sports development. Then there's another one that's a big deal, which is corporations, authorities, and commissions. And so when I look at the things that I have, and there are things that I've accomplished statewide with my colleagues, and then those things that are in the district. And I think the big thing statewide that people remember is the Clean Slate Bill. We've been trying to pass that bill to ensure that if you had gone to prison and if you had served your time and you were out, you should have the ability to have a clean slate so that you could find a job and sustain yourself and your family. And that there were certain types of felonies that people committed that they would not necessarily be eligible for certain jobs. So certainly if it was rape or, if you're robbing the bank, we're not going to send you back to the bank, right? Mm-hmm. So they were common sense positions. And the fact that I was able to help to get that passed. Reparations is a bill that has been trying to get passed for forever, right? And so we were able to do that. Not only did we pass the reparations bill, we sat the committee this year. We passed it last year. We sat the committee in February. And in this budget that just passed in April, we gave them $5 million to start their work of the study, right? That's unheard of. We passed MRTA, right? The cannabis law. And that was a 30-year moratorium. We are working out the kinks about with that. A lot of illegal stores here, but guess what? In this budget, we went back this legislative session, and we're about to shut them all down because we now have the legal tools to do so. And so we've done some really, really big things. I think in healthcare, for instance, although I don't sit on healthcare, it's a big issue with us. We saved interfaith. We've saved downstate now. We have provided record funding for those hospitals to stay open and innovate into the 21st century, change some of their services, buy new equipment, upgrade their staff pay and their access to care for themselves so that they can care for us. There's just so many things. I sit on agriculture. This year, we have a lot of wonderful upstate farms. that feed us, and we feed probably 90% of the country, right? We do a lot of good work. We now have
90% of the country, the farms here?
I mean, and not just in the country, like we export corn, we export so many things. We have 9 schools that are growing food hydroponically and in soil, because we want the next generation to know that you'll never go hungry if you know how to grow your own food. You'll never be sick because you're growing the best things and you're not putting chemicals in your food. In addition to that, we're surrounded.
And that's where
that's happening in District 16 as we speak.
Oh,
and we've got a complete pipeline from our kindergartners. We have third graders and third to fifth graders in PS5 who have gardens outside, and they have little AI kits that they build, right? And they can put the probes in and the cameras in the tomato box, for instance, go home, click onto the computer, and then they can monitor the temperature, the soil, and everything.
Really?
But they're actually, so we're using technology to grow food as well.
And the program, where does this program come from?
PS5 right here in the district. So we invest in Cornell, and they have an ag in the classroom curriculum. And we are applying to be our own Future Farmers of America chapter now that we have the Brooklyn Green School, and she's doing a phenomenal job. I'm actually going by there tomorrow to see what they're doing. Dr. Carr is just amazing. We actually honored her earlier this year as a change maker. And so it's just things like that. And we have community gardens. So not only you're learning in school, you can volunteer and have a plot in your community on the weekend if you don't happen to live in a place where you have that. Even our nature developments are growing food. And so we're really serious about our food justice and food access and food sovereignty. And I think that we have a great foundation to do that work. So I can go on and on and on.
Yeah. So, but what is it that you do want to do in your next term?
In my next term.
Yes.
So there's a couple of things. And I'm going to leave housing for last because it's a big issue. But right now, I'm really into building and preserving our institutions. So this year, I was able to fund and open, help fund and open Mr. Eric Edwards Cultural Museum of African Arts. That was right here. We did that in less than 2 years. That is unheard of in city government. This museum represents our culture. Over 3,000 artifacts in the entire collection. There's 3% that's on display at the museum. It's for us, but it's also a workforce. It's not only just our arts and culture. Our young people are going to have the opportunity to go there and learn not only about their history, but learn art curation, learn how to be an artist, learn how to be a docent or a museum curator, a full ecosystem of career opportunities for them in the arts. On Friday past, after many years, the Bed-Stuy Volunteer Ambulance Corps has been providing emergency services and saving lives in this community since 1988. They went to Haiti to help with the earthquake. They went Hurricane Sandy. They were first responders. When there are gunshots in this community, they're our first responders. They have received award after award because there was a point, the Bed-Stuy Volunteer Ambulance Corps, the Bed-Stuy Volleys, we call them. So there was a time when the response time to Bed-Stuy for ambulance was 12 to 15 minutes. Just think about heart attacks and anything that you could die from in that time. So they really saved lives. But they operate out of 2 trailers on the corner of Marcus Garvey and Green Avenue. And since I've known them, I was like, why don't they have a proper building? So when I got elected, I started working with the city council to figure out how we could convey the land to them, right? Because you can't build unless you own the land. And this year, with the help of my speaker, we were able to give them $6 million. So they're going to build the first building there. But let me just talk about how special this is. Yeah. Not only will it house the emergency services that they provide and the ambulances, but the training center, state-of-the-art training center for the next generation of EMS workers. They have partnered with, so we made this introduction, the first ever birthing center in the community. Why is that important? The Black maternal morbidity rates are off the chain. And until we can get that right, families have to feel safe and know that they're going to be supported in a family-centered environment. And so the facility will train doulas, but it will also contain the birthing center that is going to be led by Ancient Song Doula Services, Chanel Portia Albert, who I've worked with for 10 years. And then the final partner right now is the Kings Against Violence Initiative. Everybody knows Dr. Robert Gore and the wonderful work that he was doing at Kings County. He was the first one that said that violence is a public health issue. We have got to come up with programming that's going to help young people value themselves and promote peace over violence and learn how to. So they have a community-based program. They have a hospital-based program. And now they're going to have this facility where they can train more young people. And so just think about the ecosystem, right? So you're there. If you need emergency services, the volleys are going to be able to take care of you. If there's a gunshot wound coming in, they can stabilize that person. But more importantly, not as importantly, CAVI will be able to activate and talk to those families about violence, about retaliation, about safety, all of those things. So this is a one-of-a-kind, state-of-the-art building coming into our community, but it's not the facility only. It is the programming that is going to work collectively together to support our community.
And this is something you want to finish.
That is one thing. But that's almost finished because I've given them the money and the partnership is there, right? So Cultural Museum of African Art, check. Bedside Volunteer Ambulance Corp, check. The big project is the Armory. And so we are reimagining the Marcus Garvey Armory. We have an advisory committee. We've got funding this year from myself in the state assembly, and Congressman Hakeem Jeffries gave us some money. So we're going to be able to do phase 2 of that and have the community agree on what the final model is going to be. So you remember a couple of years ago, we were out on Tomafest and we were like, fill out this survey. What do you want to go inside the armory? So people gave us those ideas. And then the team put together 4 different models based on all of the ideas that we collected. And so now we're going to take those, it was 4 different centers. So we've truncated those into 2. So this summer, we're going to be outside again, and we're going to say, these are the 2 models. Vote on the one that you want. Okay. And once that's done, then we're gonna submit an RFP and have people come and apply to be, the tenants in that facility. This new wonderful facility that's been, it's 220,000 square foot, and it sits in the middle of our district, and there's nothing going on in there. And people don't know that there's a Olympic-sized swimming pool in there already that just needs to be resurfaced. We want to keep that. There is a bowling alley there already. There are riding stables. And there's another little special component to it. I don't want to tell people now about it, but it's going to just blow their minds when they find out about it.
And that's the project you want to finish?
That's the project I want to finish. And then we have K-Pool, right, which is huge. It's almost a city block long, and we only use it 3 months out of the year. And so we have the idea of this, to have this innovation center. Again, services. Right, we've got a lot of, you
Go ahead.
You still got time?
Yes, go ahead.
We have a lot of housing here. Like my district is very dense. And now it's not income-based housing, so we're gonna get to that. But what we need are places where people can learn, they can work, they can be social. We can bring in, because we are a tourist destination. People come to Brooklyn from all over the world, whether because they want to just visit or because, they want to live here. And so, International African Arts Festival, over 50 years. CalTEF, over 40 years. Asasa CalTEF, she does Juneteenth. You know who Sewa is. Okay, yeah. Asasa over 30 years. Ifeiteo, over 30 years. Like, these organizations have brought the global community to Bed-Stuy every single year. But now we have to have a place where we can showcase all of this wonderful art that we have here. And so between the Armory and the K-Pool, we'll have, again, award-winning, environmentally friendly spaces, where people can do what they do best. And so there's a couple of other projects that we could probably do as well, but those are things that I want to see to fruition. I'm not looking to stay in any position forever. Everybody knows this is my fourth career. I've been very blessed to have very lucrative careers and move on to other things that I want to do. But I think that there's some other things that we still need to do. We're in a housing crisis and different from other parts of the state, but kind of all focused on the same thing. And that really are people who have the money to buy up large swaths of land and or real estate because they can and flip it for a profit. So that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation are people who are actually scammers who had a focus in extracting Black wealth out of this community. And they have done that by stealing. I will show you this map here. You can take a picture of that. It's all the pictures. It's a picture of all the deed theft cases in Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights. And if you look at the rest of Brooklyn, it's bad. But look at Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights. How many dots do you see in Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights? So why everybody else looks like acne, we look like we have the German measles.
Yeah.
Okay. This is just cases where people have stolen properties.
Why? Why are they coming to Bed-Stuy to steal?
So when you think about New York, right? There are neighborhoods that people know. You know the Village, right? You know Harlem. You know the Upper West Side. You know Park Slope in Brooklyn. You know Brooklyn Heights. And then there's Bedford-Stuyvesant. And so we have a combination of stellar architecture, the same way those other neighborhoods do. But honestly, we have the flavor, right? Those are very historic neighborhoods. But what we bring to the table is a energy and a vibrancy that draws people in. And people just can't come and enjoy these things. They have to own them. And they want to have them at any cost. And they have done that. Right now, we have a bunch of people who are trying to convince property owners not to landmark their property. Well, let's be clear. The places where we are landmarked, those families still live in their houses. The places where we did not are the ones where they have been flipped and they have been sold. And now they're charging people $5,000 to live in an apartment that used to be $1,200. Like that is where we are.
I'm one of the victims.
Yeah. So there are a couple of pieces of legislation, two that I'm working on, one that I think that Brian Cunningham has that I think is very important. Right now, our rents are based on an AMI, an area medium income. The problem with that is the area medium income for New York City includes Westchester and the Hamptons. The two, right? Very, very high income communities. And so it skews the rents here. The average rent in Bedford-Stuyvesant, the average income is $57,000. And so if you can only charge 30% of the 57, then you have a community medium income that makes sense. People can afford that. Yes. Right? And so the reason why I say income-based housing over affordable housing.
When did that change? Because as far as I know, it was always...
It's still 30%, but the AMI has always been skewed.
Well, why? How did it get skewed? When did it change?
When the real estate people started using it as the standard for which to charge rents. People didn't always do that.
But as far as I know, if people come and this story was shared anyway, if people come with a proposal and they tell you like, okay, I'm going to build this building here, and the medium income, you should stop them right there. You as an elected official can stop them right there.
Not an elected official.
But you can tell them like, hey, listen, this is not a medium income here. My community income is different. You can stop that proposal,
so the federal law, which we all have to follow federal law, right? We can do certain things differently in the state, which is why we're trying to do the CMI. But the federal law is AMI. And once the real estate industry and the governmental entities, not the individual elected officials, vote to well, not even vote, negotiate deals with developers because they want to build housing. What they've done over the years have made very bad deals. One of them is holding them to an AMI standard and not to a CMI standard. So to your point, yes, the mayor, because only the executives, not the legislators, only the executives get to make these deals. So if you're the governor and if you're the mayor, you get to make these deals, right?
So not the assembly members, not the council members.
Only thing we can do is vote against certain policies, but if they're making deals with they have their own budget, and so they make deals for housing, and so when they decide that they're going to build a new development, what they do is they start the deal. Now, can we, if this is coming in our community, and only if they are asking for government money, can the local citizens and the local officials say, we don't want that deal, we want to do something different, which is what you hear Charles Barron talking about all the time, right? Mm-hmm. But if a developer does not need city rollbacks or tax breaks, they can do what they want with the property they bought, and they can charge what they want. And so I have a bill
based on AMI.
Based on whatever they want. But the AMI is lucrative to them, and it keeps them from being sued because they can just say, this is a federal law.
Yeah.
And so my bill was fashioned after a bill that just recently passed in Canada. And I call it the House New Yorkers First Act. And essentially, it puts a moratorium. I didn't do an out-and-out ban, but a moratorium on all foreign investment of residential property unless you're planning on living in it. Because again, what's happening is you have $2 million to invest. You get 10 other investors. You look at the real estate market in Bed-Stuy and you're like, oh, right? Prices are going up. People want to go there, so they're going to pay higher rent. So I'm going to buy all of these brownstones that are on the tax lien list or people who are at risk for foreclosure, right? I go and stir it up. I offer their family a little bit of the money. I tell them, you're not paying your tax bill. You're going to lose the house anyway. So you might as well take this $100,000 that I'm giving you.
Those are the red dots.
Exactly. Yeah. That's happened over and over and over again, right? So this says, oh, you can buy a property, but you got to live in it.
Yes. Okay.
And so we want to retard that from happening.
What about the NYCHA rules? Because just this week I saw a post on Facebook of affordable housing, which was like medium income, or the income needs to be like $150 or something. The rent was like $3.5. That's also based on AMI. I mean, NYCHA, you're talking.
That's based on That's based on AMI and not CMI because the law has not passed. And so it's a thing that I've been talking to people about. It's not even in my bill, but I think it's a good bill because when I first started thinking about it, I wanted to census track. I wanted to be very hyper focused on income, so that if you're building a building in that census tract, then whatever the median income is, and we know what the median income is because we do the American survey every year. So we know how much money people are making. And so if you want to build something there, this is what the income band is. This is what the income band is, and this is how you can charge them rent.
Okay. Was it why I remember they were protesting once down your office? Was this because of this reason?
That was about a bill called Good Cause Eviction. And basically, Good Cause Eviction says, which makes sense, right? You can only evict somebody on good cause, right? But there's a couple of problems with the bill. I said to them, looking at it,
what does good cause mean? You can evict somebody on a good cause.
There's a list of things that they say that the reason why you could evict someone. Well, one, we already know. If you don't pay your rent, you can get evicted. Of course, yeah. Nearly 90% of cases that are in eviction courts is based on people not paying their rent.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, yeah.
Right.
The landlords got to pay their bills too.
So now we're only dealing with a smaller swath of people, 10% of people. Those people are the people who are the victims of either the folks on the worst landlord list. I have a new bill out about that. We had the press conference last week to go after them, number one. Number two, because they buy the building, these big developers out, and then they start to go up the rent because, oh, I have to make these improvements, right? And they either make their improvements on top of you, or they say, oh, you have to take a voucher and go somewhere else, and then you can come back. They don't allow. So we've put legislation in place to stop those people from exploiting, but some of those things do exist. And what we want to say to people are, if you read your list, please read your lease very carefully. If you don't understand it, please go to, we have free legal services, Brooklyn Legal Services, Corp A, Legal Hands, any community development corporation will help you read your lease. Know what you're signing. If you are in a rent stabilized apartment, you can go on I am rent stabilized and look up your last rent. So, because they can only go up a percentage. And so if they're telling you now you got to pay $4,000, you're like, no, I'm not. My unit is rent, I'm stabilized. You're going to only charge me $1,750. So there are tools and programs that are in place to empower tenants, but a lot of people feel shamed about, getting an eviction notice, or they may be in court fighting their landlord about something that they're not repairing, and then that becomes a whole thing. But there are protections for tenants in the state of New York, and every year we go back to figure out something else. My main problem with Good Cause was it did not distinguish between those landlords that were being abusive and those community-based landlords who have taken care of my family for generations.
Yeah.
I'm still a tenant. People don't believe it, but I'm still a tenant. My mother was a tenant. My mother was a tenant. Now, my grandfather's side of the family, they were able to buy one house, and everybody lived in it until they were able to go off to other places. But that's the Bed-Stuy story. And if it wasn't for community-based landlords who will give you a deal because they want to see you do well, they want you a part of the community, that's not the person who is trying to gouge you for rent or not make repairs in the house, because these people live in the same house. So they want to take care of and maintain their property. And I said to them, listen, as a government, the same way I can tell you the choices to make about your body, how am I going to tell you the choices to make about your property? As long as you are following the law where you are providing heat and hot water and your apartment is safe, I can't tell you as the government that we're going to let you get a break for this house that you own, but every other property, we're going to regulate it because you happen to own more than one. Well, a lot of times if you're Black, you have two houses because you need one to pay for the other one, because you can't get a bank loan. So you got to take out the equity in one to pay for this. Or if you want to own a business, or you want to send somebody to college, or if you want to invest in something else, you have to take it out of your own savings or the equity in your home. It has been the lifesaver for so many people after generations. And we have too many people in housing court who haven't paid their rent to looking at this. Those dots recommend, we have another map that talks about the amount of people who have lost their homes because their tenants didn't pay their rent.
Yeah, housing is definitely
it's a big deal. But we need to pass these bills, and we need to get people on board about the help that they need, and people need to back me on this worst landlord thing. That bill says if you are on that list. So right now, I think Tish started that list, right? And now Jamani has the list. And so every year they publish the list. And every year some of those people are back on there. So we had a press conference because the third worst landlord in New York City and the number one in Brooklyn, he owns property in District, 2 buildings right next to each other. So we went there, we had the press conference to announce the bill. And the bill is simple. If you get on the worst landlord list, right, or if you have a certain number of violations, you have 4 months to fix those violations. If you do not, HPD is going to send you back to property management school at your own expense. You have to take 2 full courses to understand what it is to maintain your property. If you take those and you still don't amend the violation, then HPD puts your property into receivership. They don't take it from you. You still own it, but the city will, and the state, if it passes on the state law, will put it in receivership. So those rents that are being paid will go to HPD to defray from the cost of them fixing their property, because that's what they do right now. Mm-hmm. If a violation is so bad, HPD will go in. I have a property right here, 400 Herkimer. They had to work with. You actually, they fix it, and then they have to then sue the landlord to get the money back. So we're saying, no, we shouldn't have to go through that trouble. Why does the government have to go to court when you're doing the wrong thing? Yeah. So we're just gonna hold on to the property, and then if you want it back, then you do the right thing. You'll fix the things, or we'll fix it. And if you never fix them, guess what happens? Mm-hmm. The city owns it, and then they can sell it to, because this used to happen. That if you ever hear about restoration and in the 70s and 80s, the city was selling properties and brownstones for $1.
Yes, I remember.
You remember that? Yeah. So we're going to go back to that, because again, when you invest in community-based landlords, your community thrives.
Okay, so
yes,
that's a whole lot.
That's a whole lot.
Next term, Stefani wins.
Yes.
Another term. What's next?
What's next?
Yes. After what is it that you envision doing after are you going to go for consul? Are you going to go for president?
No, I really did not have political aspirations. My focus has been on really serving the community that has nurtured my family. I live here. I want to do my part to enhance it. And so I haven't thought about running for another position at all.
So you're not running for office after assembly? No?
I thought that, I would do my 8 years, and in those years help someone else. There's some other things I want to do. I would love that. I would love to go back and get my medical degree in gerontology, so I could, help the next generation of elders. There's a couple of books that I would like to write. I love
about.
Oh, very interesting. They are both. One is it's a fiction, but it's based on a real life event, and it's a redux of remember the Atlanta child kidnappings, when all of these Black children were being kidnapped.
I didn't know the story, but please share.
Yes.
Okay.
And so there was a time, and they finally found the person, but there was a Black man, and they didn't think it was them. So they were being kidnapped, and they were being and some of them were murdered.
Wow.
And so it has another explanation about what could happen, what really happened, and it really. So I can't tell you too much about that, but yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they're all really centered on what I call the vibranium of people of African descent. We've been able to innovate ourselves out of so many difficult situations. I really think problem solving and really addressing life's biggest challenge is what we do best. And those are two books I want to read. I want to do that. And then my last thing, because I love the arts and culture, I would love to curate art and culture tours all over the country.
You'll be perfect.
Yes. And so we're going to do one next year. The first one we're going to do is in celebration of Harriet Tubman. So we're going to do the Underground Railroad stops in New York State, and then we're going to cross into Canada and celebrate her there too.
I'm going to need you to connect you with Jennifer Tosh, who is doing the Black Heritage Tour in Amsterdam.
Oh.
She's looking for people here in New York.
Okay.
Because she also has a tour here.
Yes.
But I think you'll be perfect. But I'll connect you with the Jennifer Tosh.
Yeah. And so let me just say this. When I say I would never run for office again, it's it's not, I didn't think I was going to do this time.
Right. No,
and if I thought, if I ever did it, that it was like when I retired and I went to some small town, even though I can't imagine living anywhere except for Brooklyn. I can, and there are places that I do want to live, but I think I always have a place in Brooklyn.
What place?
But I really, if I had my wish right now, I would spend a quarter of my year in Ghana, another quarter in Panama, a quarter in Martha's Vineyard, and then Brooklyn.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I would definitely do that. But yeah, I think that I would never. The Congress is crazy. I would never.
Never say never.
I know. But Washington.
Okay. But you talked about how we keep inventing ourselves, and the one thing that we also have in common is our locks.
Yeah,
that's one of the places people don't realize how we keep reinventing ourselves. Even the wigs and the weaves that we see right now is an invention of for our survival, because there was a time when we couldn't find work if we didn't have straight hair.
That's right.
So in this case, I wanted to interview you first because you have locks, but also because you have but this program is about locks and life.
Yes.
So tell me about your lock story.
Oh my goodness, it's interesting. My mom got her locks first. And so I was just I was telling Diane Bailey this last night because now the National Hair Braiding Coalition is hosting an event for me this evening, and we were talking about how we met, and I was just telling them that I was so surprised in the 90s when I started realizing that there were young women who were talking about that they were experiencing hair discrimination. I've worn my hair natural most of my life. I had a perm for and it was a kitty perm for 6 months because my hair is very soft. And I would blow dry my hair straight. And then, I grew up in a hot comb era, so I would do that if I wanted to wear it straight. But it was free of chemicals, right? I wore it like that. And then tomorrow you can see me in twist and afro. And so my mother was a natural and is a natural beauty. We just, we were very proud of our heritage and we always wanted to wear it. There's no place that I've ever gone, school or a job, that people said
something from Bed-Stuy. Why is it? What does this natural? Does it come from Bed-Stuy? Did it grow here?
I really think that we were so actively engaged in the Black Power movement in the 60s, and that was tough, right? Because our Southern family had to, they went to church. Your hair had to be straight. You had to be dressed a certain way. And so when folks in Brooklyn and New York, as they call it, started coming down with afros and this, that, and the other, it was like, oh, that was revolutionary, right? Yeah. But it wasn't. And we say, well, no, we are embracing our relationship with the continent. We understand where we came from, and we want to bring that culture here. And it was like the Martin Luther King and the Malcolm X argument. But I think people started understanding that our hair and our skin has always been revolutionary. And so you either embrace it or you fall victim to it. Because when you subscribe to a European standard of beauty, they will continue to dictate what you can do and what you can't, right?
Absolutely.
If you say from the beginning, this is who I am and how I want to show up, you will probably be rejected. But what I will tell you is that you will be embraced fully somewhere else, right? And so if you want to be a lawyer, then you might need to find you the Metropolitan Black Bar Association or a Black law firm. And they've been Black law firms for generations. And so that do well. You might have to support the Crown Act so that legislatively nobody can ever tell you again that you can't wear your hair a certain way.
I think everybody's for the Crown Act. I mean, everybody, no matter what you do your hair. But I mean, for me, for me personally, it was never a problem to be natural as well.
Right.
I mean, I straightened my hair for 14 years and I had every chemical on my head until I said, like, what's it, you know,
What am I doing?
until my hair started breaking. I wasn't like, you know, black conscious, or I just stopped because my hair was breaking. Very simple. But I've come to learn like a lot over the years. And the stories that I hear is like, for instance, I mean, you're saying, and I agree with you because I was like, my background is in IT. So I went to Japan with braids and in Italy with bantu knots, you know, like by the time I went natural.
Right.
And I was like, nobody's going to stop me. But I was in IT, you know, like that's, I don't know, that's kind of a different kind of profession, especially at that time.
That's right.
Like you say, when you always show up the way you are, like I remember, who's this wonderful lady? She wrote a book. She was this black woman who was the CEO of what's this company called? This high IT company as well. But she also had like a little afro. Nobody ever told her something. But there are people like who are natural all of their life. I know all of their lives. I know this story from this woman who had locks, and then she tried to get a simple job at what's this
department store or something.
Yeah, water park, this water park. And no, because they didn't even know it was locks. She told them it was locks, and then no, you can't come because. So you have those situations too.
Those situations. Right?
So that's why we need a Crown Act, right?
That's right, and that's why that we also have so many entrepreneurs, because people realize that you don't want to compromise who you are for somebody else's business, because they'll ask you to compromise on the second thing. So I'm just going to open up my own business, because what we know is that they're going to end up chasing our dollars anyway. They're going to find a way to co-opt what it is that we do. So everybody now got a commercial with a very, very, very brown or black girl or boy hair in any and every state.
And you never had any hair issues, meaning like, I think that's great. And I think that's something that I found here in Bed-Stuy too.
Yes.
The consciousness about black hair.
So. I think they have a consciousness about our people and who we are. We've got a value system about how we work, how we move in community, how we work as a collective. Those are all of the things, you know, that Mushood says it best, right? When you wear Mushood, you wear yourself. And you have to, you got to embrace that. Because when you don't know your culture, you don't feel comfortable repping your culture, people will continue to erode away who you are, and then you won't be able to recognize yourself.
So, two last things. The best thing that happened to you during your time in office?
Oh my God.
And the worst thing that happened to you during your time in office?
Oh my God.
You may start with the worst thing.
The worst thing that happened to me since, oh man, the worst thing. I believe in the Constitution. And I think if you are 18 and you're a U.S. citizen and you want to run for office, you should do it. And I will probably sit down with you and help you navigate how to get there. But I have a problem with people exploiting other people to run for office simply because they want to be in control or have power and not really understand that you're here to serve the people. And so
you're talking about your opponent?
I'm talking about the fact that they're using the same political ugliness. So there was an attack on my office in Albany. I went to a meeting and I came back and my entire door was plastered with all of these messages. Now, you have to understand, when you come to Albany, we have protesters come through all the time. They have signs, this, that, the other. After you get through security, there's not cameras where our personal offices are, so people can roam the halls and do whatever they want to. But this person had to know when I left my office, because the way it was constructed on my door, I'll show you a picture of it. There's no way that anybody could have done it. And the person who took the picture and put it up on Twitter, he was too short to have reached the top. So you know that there was multiple people who did it. And it had to be a member's office that he constructed it in, because he couldn't have done it in the hallway. Like if he was sitting there doing that in the hallway, somebody would have said something. Somebody would have saw him, and they did not.
But what is
So but these
the goal?
I want to draw these things together. And so then they sent a group of people to my house, and they put the black woman on the mic to yell, "Why aren't you supporting good cause eviction?" But the white people were standing behind her. And I've since seen her just about every year because she's still protesting, or they're paying her to protest, whatever it is. And so they protested my office and my home. And you don't do personal homes, right? I have 2 offices. You can come to my office, and they did come here too, but they also came to my home. And so I would say that is the worst. And I think right now what's happening, they're trying to do it again. And so they've protested my office 2 days here on a bill that I'm supporting. Mm-hmm. So they're handing out leaflets with my face on it saying, she better not come home until she brings home this bill. First of all, you don't tell anybody that they can't come home to their community. And you're certainly not going to tell a black woman that she can't come home to her community. I live here, I work here, I play here. I spend most of my salary in this district because I believe that we can get to a point where we can circulate our dollar in this community so that we can take care of ourselves and we don't have to have
ugliness. Where does it come from?
The ugliness comes from when you don't have something to offer people. I always tell them this is the Republican playbook, right? They may not be Republicans, but they're using the Republican playbook. So I don't have anything to offer you. I don't even know you because I don't even live in this community. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear down what you have, right? So that if I can get enough people to believe the lies, right, or get upset about what you're talking about, then they either won't show up to vote at all, and then we can take over, or they will turn against the person. And so you have to think about, why would someone who never lived in this community, never, would want to cross the border, he still doesn't live in this community, and then say, I want to be in charge? Do you know how many leaders, civic leaders we have in this community that would be great in this role? Why in the world would you think, not having established a relationship, that you could come, haven't been to a community board meeting, precinct council meeting, clergy council meeting, don't go to church, haven't been to a China meeting, a Brownstoner meeting, all of these things that happen here. You haven't been to an open streets, a block party. Like, this is where your constituents are. This is where they live. And you haven't convened with them, but you're saying, I'm going to represent you better than her. Because she is lie number 1, lie number 2, lie number 3. And so what you come to the community saying is, oh, I believe in what they told me to believe in, but I can be an staunch advocate for what you believe in. Well, how can you do that when you don't know what we believe in and what we want?
So how do you deal with it?
There are days that I deal with it better than others. I don't like when I think about it more than once and just say, they're doing this. That's the Republican playbook. I don't have to deal with it. Other times, I'm just affronted that you would actually think that you have the right to do that, and that there are people here who want to be in charge themselves, or who have such a lack of information that they would be swayed by your non-argument. Because you can only promise people what you do. There's nothing in your background that says, and he's got a website, the whole 9 yards, that you've done anything for this community that didn't also involve yourself.
Did you do for other communities?
No.
Okay.
He's a PTA president, but if you're a PTA president, you do that because your kid's in school. Everybody does that, right? Not everybody, but it's something you do. It's not something that you actually did outside of your community. So that really is the worst, because I love my job. I love my job. I love this community. And so the best thing about this community is having the ability to plan with them the better tomorrow that we're building together. Everything I do. Name you a project.
Name the best day, the best. thing about this whole
Oh my
period that you've been in office? Like what? One highlight,
To
two
see-
highlights.
To see the projects come to light, the opening of the museum, the investment in the building for Bedside Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Know that, and knowing that we've got this advisory committee of local people who have worked to bring before the people a facility that they could be proud of and that they're going to get to vote on it. Nobody else, no developer coming to give us some plan and saying this is what it is. No, it is all about what the people of Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights want. And the fact that I get to do that every day, what I think is the smartest and dopest and most innovative and cultured and caring and service oriented and spiritual people on the planet. They live in my district and I get to serve them every day.
On that note, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So,
yes.
yeah, okay, now let's
These are all the
see.
things.